Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Leviticus chapter 20 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Okay, let's dive into this. Leviticus chapter 20 is basically the ultimate blueprint for creating a society with incredibly strict, unyielding boundaries. Picture this. We're looking at a text meant to shape a nation that just left Egypt and is gearing up to enter the land of Canaan. They need a definitive structure. To pull that off, this chapter establishes hard, non-negotiable lines between what's acceptable and what is absolutely forbidden. It doesn't just suggest good behavior. It dictates the very survival structure of a community trying to maintain a completely pure, set-apart existence. To truly grasp what's going on in these verses, we have to look through a very specific lens, and that is the concept of holiness. Now, in this text, holiness doesn't just mean being a good person in some vague spiritual sense. The Hebrew concept here literally means to be set apart, completely distinct, and entirely separated from the practices of the outside world. Every single rule we're about to walk through is anchored in this one major goal, maintaining a stark, undeniable difference between the Israelites and the nations surrounding them.
Section 1. Prohibiting Molech and mediums.
Let's start with verses 1 through 5, where the text establishes an absolute rejection of foreign religious customs. God speaks to Moses and lays down a strict rule. Any Israelite, or any alien living in Israel, who gives their children to an idol named Molech must be put to death. Molech was a deity worshipped by surrounding nations, and that worship infamously involved the horrific practice of child sacrifice. The text is incredibly severe here. The community is commanded to stone the offender. And if the people close their eyes, meaning they just look the other way and fail to act, God says he will personally set his face against that man and his entire family. There is zero tolerance for contaminating the sanctuary with this brutal custom.
Moving right into verse 6, the text addresses anyone who turns to mediums and spiritists. These were ancient practices of divination, basically trying to consult the dead. The punishment mentioned here introduces a really important term we're going to see a lot, being cut off. When the text says someone will be cut off from their people, it's describing a severe spiritual and communal exile. It means ultimate banishment. You are completely severed from the nation, the covenant, and the future of the people. It's the ultimate consequence for abandoning the community's boundaries. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how verses 7 and 8 frame these intense punishments. God explicitly commands the people, "Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and follow them." The logic behind these harsh punishments is right there. God is the one who sanctifies the people and makes them holy. Because of that, participating in child sacrifice or consulting spirits isn't just a bad habit, it is a direct rejection of the sanctity God is instilling in the nation. To be holy, you have to reject the unholy completely.
Section 2. Respect and severe transgressions. As we move into verses 9 through 16, the focus shifts from foreign idolatry to strict internal moral codes, specifically protecting the family. The family was the absolute core unit of this ancient society. Verse 9 starts with a really striking rule. Anyone who curses their father or mother must be put to death. The text says his blood will be on his own head, which means the offender brings this ultimate consequence entirely upon themselves. Now, why such a severe penalty just for words? Well, in this society, absolute respect for parents was foundational. Parents were the crucial link transmitting the history and the laws from God to the next generation. Cursing them was viewed as an attack on the very survival of the society. Verses 10 through 12 then detail a list of capital offenses concerning direct family incest and adultery. If a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both are to be put to death. The text also lists sleeping with a father's wife, which deeply dishonors the father, and sleeping with a daughter-in-law, which the text explicitly calls a perversion. In the plain reading of the text, these rules are fortresses designed to prevent the total breakdown of the family unit. These acts were seen as ultimate perversions of family boundaries that would destroy the trust and the clear lineage required for their community to function. Verses 13 through 16 continue with laws regarding sexual boundaries. The text neutrally and clearly lists these out as severe transgressions. Verse 13 states that if a man lies with a man as one lies with a woman, both have done what is detestable and must be put to death. Verse 14 prohibits marrying both a woman and her mother, labeling it wicked and mandating a severe punishment of burning to remove that wickedness. Finally, verses 15 and 16 require the death penalty for both the human and the animal in cases of bestiality, whether committed by a man or a woman. Within the context of Leviticus, these acts carried severe, non-negotiable capital punishments because they were viewed as fundamentally crossing the natural, holy boundaries established for Israel.
Section 3. Impure marriages and relations.
Following those capital offenses, verses 17 through 21 logically break down extended boundaries. Here, we're looking at extended family relations and states of ritual impurity. Verse 17 calls marrying a sister or half-sister a disgrace, stating they must be cut off before the eyes of their people. Verse 18 prohibits sexual relations during a woman's monthly period, resulting in both being cut off. Then verses 19 through 21 cover relations with aunts, an uncle's wife, or a brother's wife. Notice how the consequence shifts here. Instead of execution, the text says they will die childless or be childless. It's about drawing very specific lines to ensure the wider family network stays ordered and distinct.
All throughout this section, you'll hear this recurring phrase, bearing their iniquity, or being held responsible. To keep things simple and grounded purely in the text, this means exactly what it sounds like. There is no shifting the blame. The individuals are held fully accountable for their actions before God and the community. When you cross these specific familial boundaries, the guilt rests squarely on your own shoulders.
Section 4. Avoiding the nation's customs. Okay, having laid out this incredibly dense list of rules, verses 22 through 24 give us the anchor for the entire chapter. This answers the big why. So the crucial point is right here. The text ties all these rules directly to God's promise of the land. God commands the people to keep his decrees so that the land won't vomit them out. He promises them an inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey, but this promise comes with massive conditions. They absolutely cannot live the way the previous inhabitants lived if they want to stay securely in this promised land. The comparison in verses 22 and 23 is seriously vivid. God says, "You must not live according to the customs of the nations I am going to drive out before you." Why are those nations being driven out? Because, according to the text, they did all these things, the idolatry, the perversions we just read about, and God abhorred them. It's a graphic warning. If Israel adopts these defiled customs, the land will literally vomit them out, just like it's doing to the current inhabitants. The holy statutes are their only anchor to the land.
Section 5. Clean animals and holiness.
Moving into verses 25 and 26, the idea of being set apart suddenly shifts from these grand life-or-death societal laws right down to the mundane reality of daily life, what you eat. Verse 25 demands a strict distinction between clean and unclean animals and clean and unclean birds. They are told not to defile themselves with what God has set apart as unclean. Think about it. These dietary laws were a physical, everyday boundary. 3 times a day, every time they sat down for a meal, the Israelites were physically reminded of their unique status and their separation from other peoples.
And then we hit verse 26, which is absolutely the overarching thesis of the entire chapter. Listen to the summary. You are to be holy to me, because I, the Lord, am holy, and I have set you apart from the nations to be my own. That's the ultimate goal. The strict boundaries, rejecting foreign idols, the diet, every single bit of it is designed to mirror the holiness of God himself. By being distinct, they show the world they belong exclusively to a holy God.
The chapter then wraps up with one brief final verse. Verse 27 loops right back to the beginning, stating that a man or woman who is a medium or spiritist must be put to death by stoning. Their blood will be on their own heads. By dropping the specific law again at the very end, the text brackets the whole chapter, reminding us of the absolute necessity of protecting the community's spiritual purity from occult practices. There's just no room for divided loyalties here. Section 6. Key ideas and lessons. We've walked through the text step by step, focusing purely on the plain meaning. And this brilliantly illustrates some powerful practical lessons for us today. First, separate from harmful cultural practices. Just like Israel rejected Molech, we learn the principle of guarding our own communities against toxic outside influences. Second, maintain absolute respect within the family. The text's intense focus on respecting parents and honoring marital bounds reminds us that a strong society is built on a healthy family unit. And third, strive for personal holiness and boundaries. From what we consume to how we behave, clear boundaries give us identity and purpose. Leviticus 20 is undoubtedly a challenging, intense chapter of ancient law, but it leaves us with an incredible reflection on identity. If holiness truly means being set apart, we have to ask ourselves, in a modern world full of endless influence and shifting morals, where do you draw your boundaries to stay set apart? What defines your personal integrity?
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.